everyone, today my group 2 will present about tab 15 and 20 and my group includes Nguyễn Tấn Kim Long, Nguyễn Khánh Ngọc, Lê Thị Thảo Nguyên and Trương Xuân Nguyên. But first, me is Lê Thị Thảo Nguyên and Trương Xuân Nguyên. We're gonna present about tab 15, long-term financing. Okay, so I would like to have an introduction first. When a business borrows from a bank using long-term finance methods, it expects to pay back the loan over more than a 1-year period. For example, it may include making payments on a 20-year mortgage. So, in this long-term financing, we have features of common stock and preferred stocks, corporate long-term debt, different types of bonds, bank loans, international bonds, patterns of financing, and finally is recent change in capital structure.
Okay, so let's start. The first part is about some features of common and preferred stocks.
So, let's begin with the first one, some features of common and preferred stock. We have common stock features. It means different things to different people, but it is usually applied to stock that has no special reference either in receiving dividends or in bankruptcy. And preferred stock features pays a cash dividend expressed in terms of dollars per share. Okay, let's begin with the shareholder rights and the common stocks. So, shareholder rights. A corporation's shareholder elect director who, in turn, he management to carry out their directives. Directors are elected at an annual shareholders meeting by a vote of the holders of a majority of shares who are present and entitled to vote. To illustrate the two different voting procedures, imagine that the corporation has two shareholders, Smith with 20 shares and Jones with 80 shares. Both want to be a director. Jones does not want Smith. However, we assume there are a total of 4 directors to be elected. Next, the effect of cumulative voting is to allow minority participation. If cumulative voting is permitted, the total number of votes that each shareholder may cast is determined first. In our example, it means that the top 4 votes gathered will be the new director. The shareholder can distribute votes however she wishes. But will Smith get a seat on the board? If we ignore the possibility of a 5-way tie, then the answer is yes. Smith will cast 20 multiplied 4 is 80 votes, and John will cast 80 multiplied 4 is 320 votes. And if Smith gives all his votes to himself, he is assured of a directorship. The reason is that Jones can divide 320 votes or more for a candidate in such a way as to give all of them more than 80 votes, so Smith will finish for at worst. And next, with string voting, the director are elected at one time. Each time, Smith can cast 20 votes and Jones can cast 80 votes. As a consequence, Jones will elect all of the candidates. The only way to granting a seat is all 50% plus 1 share. And this answer guarantees that you will win every seat. So it's really all or nothing. And overall, the staggering has two basic effects. The first one, staggering makes it more difficult for a minority to elect a director in the cumulative voting because fewer directors are elected at one time. Second, staggering, the detail takes over at times because of the difficulty of voting in a majority of new directors. And then we have proxy voting. So a proxy is a grant of authority by a shareholder to someone else to vote her shares. However, as an outside group of shareholders can try to obtain proxies in return to replace management by electing enough directors. Besides, we have classes of stock. Some firms have more than class of common stock after the classes are created with unequal voting rights. For example, Ford Motors Company Class B common stock is held by the family interest in a political trade. The class 40% of the voting power, even though it represents less than 10% of the total number of shares outstanding. Other rights. The value of a share of common stock in a corporation is directly related to general rights of shareholders, and we have following rights. Firstly, the right to share proportionally in dividends. Secondly, the right to share proportionally in assets to remain after liabilities have been paid in a liquidation. And finally, the right to vote are stockholder matters of a great performance, and is very important, such as a merger. Voting usually occurs at their annual meeting or a special meeting. And we have dividends. Corporations are legally authorized to pay dividends to shareholders. The payment of dividends is at the discretion of the board of directors. So first, unless a dividend is declared by the board of directors of a corporation, it's not a liability of a corporation. And a corporation cannot default on an undeclared dividend, and therefore, corporation cannot become bankrupt because of non-payment of dividend. Second, dividends are paid out of the corporation after tax cash flow. They are not business expenses and are not deductible for corporate tax purposes. And thirdly, dividends received by individual shareholders are taxable. However, corporations that own stock in other corporations are permitted to exclude 70% of the dividend amounts that they receive and are taxed on only the remainder of 30%. Okay, in the referred stock feature, and here we have state value, cumulative and non-cumulative dividends, and its referred stock related debt. So, state value. Preferred shares have a state liquidating value, usually $100 per share. In cumulative and non-cumulative dividends, a preferred dividend is not like interest on a bond. Dividends payable on preferred stock are either cumulative or non-cumulative. If preferred dividends are cumulative and are paid in a particular year, they will be carried forward as an arrearage. Unpaid preferred dividends are not debts of the firm. Directors elected by the common shareholders can defer preferred dividends indefinitely, and its preferred stock related debt. So, a good case can be made that preferred stock is really debt in this case. Preferred shareholders receive a state dividend only and if corporation is liquidated. Though preferred stock typically has no maturity date, many issues have oligarchy thinking funds.
Let's go to the second part, is corporate long-term debt.
Let's move on to corporate long term. So, securities issued by corporation may be classified roughly as equity securities or debt securities. And the main difference between debt and equity are: firstly, debt is not an ownership interest in the firm. Creditors generally do not have voting power. Secondly, the corporation payment of interest on debt is considered a cost of doing business and is fully tax deductible. Dividends paid to stockholders are not tax deductible. An unpaid debt is a liability of a firm. If it is not paid, the creditors can legally claim the assets of the firm. So, is the debt or equity? Well, sometimes it's not clear if a particular security is debt or equity. For example, bubbles up a corporation issue a perceptual bond with interest payable solely from corporate income, if and only if earned. Whether or not it is really a debt is hard to say and is really a legal and semantic issue, because in taxing authorities would have the final say. And we have first, the indenture is a written agreement between the corporation and its the creditors, and is sometimes referred to as the deed of trust. And the bond indenture is a legal document which includes the basic terms of the bonds, the description of property used as security, seniority, the repayment arrangements, the common provisions, detail of the protective covenants. And we have the security is that security are classified according to the collateral mortgage used to protect the bondholder. Collateral is a general term that frequently means securities that are pledged as security for payment of debt. Mortgage securities are secured by a mortgage on a real property of the borrower. And next, we have the seniority. In general forms, seniority indicates preference in position over other lenders, and debts are sometimes labeled as senior or junior to indicate seniority. Some debt is insubordinated, as seen, for example, a subordinated debenture. The next one is the repayment. Bond can be repaid entirely at maturity, at which time the bondholder receives at the state or face value of the bond, or they may be repaid in part or in entire before maturity. And we have sinking fund is an accompaniment the bond justly for the purpose of repaying the bonds. And we have these three they are example. First is some sinking fund start about 10 years after the initial issuance. Secondly, some sinking funds establish equal payments over the life of the bond. And 3. Some high-quality bonds issue establish payments to the sinking funds and are sufficient to redeem their entire issue. And then, we have the call provision. A call provision allows the company to repurchase or call part of all the bond issue at state prices over a specific period. Covered bonds are usually K-label. The difference between the call price and the state value is the call premium, and we have a default contribution during the period of prohibition. The bond is said to be protected. And finally, we have protective covenants. Is a protective in the indenture loan agreement, and we have two types. First is negative covenant. Is a sole type of covenant. It limits or prohibits action that the company may take. And then the positive covenant is a self-showed type of covenant. It specifies an action that the company must take or condition that the company must abide by.
And now, let's move on to 3 and 4. Number 3 is some different types of bonds, and number 4 is bank loans.
In part 3, we talk about different types of bonds. So floating rate bonds. With floating rate bonds, the coupon payments are adjustable. The adjustments are tied to an increased state index such as Treasury bill interest rate or the 30 years Treasury bond rates. And the majority of loans have the following features. Here we have first, the holder has the right to redeem his note at par on the coupon payment date after some specified amount of time. There is called a provision, and it is discussed in the following section. Second, the coupon rate has a floor and ceiling, meaning that the coupon is subject to a minimum and maximum, and in this case, the coupon rate is said to be capped, and the upper and lower rates are sometimes called the collar. we have other types of bonds. If income bonds are similar to conventional bonds except that the coupon payments are dependent on coupon income. The convertible bond can be swapped for a fixed number of shares of stock anytime before maturity at the holder's option. And we have a bond bond allows the holder to force the issuer to buy bond back at a stated price. And finally, we have some unusual payments. They are CoCo bonds and NoNo bonds. So, two of them are recent exclusive bonds are CoCo bonds, which have a coupon payment, and NoNo bonds, which are zero coupon bonds. And finally, is about bank loans. So, a firm may simply borrow from a bank, and we have two important features of the bank loans are lines of credit and syndication. So, lines of credit. Bank often provide a business customer with a line of credit, setting the maximum amount that the bank is willing to lend to the business. I will give you an example. So, a revolver for 75 million with a 3-year commitment, implying that the business could borrow part of on the 75 million anytime within the next 3 years. The commitment fee is generally charged on the unused portion of the revolver. Suppose that the commitment fee is 0.2% and corporation borrows 25 million in a particular year, leaving 50 million unborrowed. So, the dollar commitment fee would be $100,000 because we will get the 0.2% multiplied for $50 million for a year, in addition to the interest on the 25 million actually borrowed. And the next one is syndicated loans. So, syndicate is generally composed of a arranger and participant lenders. As the suggests, the lend arranger takes the lead creating the relationship with the borrower and negotiating the specifics of the loan. A syndicated loans may be policy trade, it may be a line of credit and be undrawn, it may be drawn and used by a firm. Syndicated loans are always rated investment grade. However, leveraged syndicated loan is rated speculative grade.
Hi guys, I'm Sun Nguyen from Group 2. My responsibility is Part 5, 6, 7 of Chapter 15 and Part 1 of Chapter 20.
Part 5. International Bonds. Eurobond is a bond issued in multiple countries but denominated in a single country, usually the issuer's home currency. For example, an American firm may issue a dollar-denominated bond in a number of countries. Such bonds have become an important way to raise capital for many international companies and governments. Foreign bonds, unlike Eurobonds, are issued in a single country and are usually denominated in that country's currency. For example, a Canadian firm might issue yen-denominated bonds in Japan. Foreign bonds often are nicknamed for the country where they are issued. For example, Yankee bonds in the United States, Samurai bonds in Japan, or Bulldog bonds in Britain. Moving on to Part 6, Patterns of Financing. We have a question here. How can these firms want to spend on capital projects with positive NPV, get the cash fund investments in positive NPV? The answer is, firstly, firms generating positive cash flow internally can use that cash flow for positive NPV investment. Second, Firms can fund positive NPV capital spending through external financing by issuing debt and equity. The relationship between investment and financing is described in figure, the long-term financial deficit. The left-hand side of the figure indicates that cash flow can fund both capital spending and investment in net working capital. The right-hand side of the figure shows the two sources of cash flow, internal and external financing. In the figure, uses of cash flow exceed internal financing. Thus, stocks and bonds must be issued to fill the financial deficit. Moving on to part 7, recent trends in capital structure. We have a question: which are best, book or market values? In general, financial economists prefer market values. However, many corporate treasurers may find book values more appealing to the volatility of market values.
Chapter 20, Raising Capital. In this chapter, we have the key concept and skills. We have 4 of them. Understand the venture capital market and its role in financing new businesses. Understand how securities are sold to the public and the role of investment bankers. Understand initial public offerings and the cost of going public. And the last one is understand the process of secondary offerings and the impact of dilution. Outline. We have 11 parts of this chapter. Early stage financing and venture capital, the public issue, alternative issue methods, the cash offer, the announcement of new equity in the value of the firm, the cost of new issues, rights, the rights puzzle, dilution, self-registration, and issuing long-term debt.
First part, early stage financing and venture capital, we're gonna go through the definition of venture capital and the 6 stages of financing. The first one is venture capital's definition. It is financing for new, often high-risk venture. Financial intermediaries that are typically set up as limited partnerships play an active role in overseeing, advising, and monitoring companies in which they invest. Generally do not want to own the investment forever. We're moving on the stages of financing. We have 6 of them. The first stage is seed money stage. It's a small amount of financing needed to prove a concept or develop a product. Marketing is not included in this stage. The second stage is startup. Financing for firms started within the past years. Funds are likely to pay for marketing and product development expenditures. The third one is first round financing. It is additional money to begin sales and manufacturing after a firm has spent its startup funds. And the fourth stage is second round financing. Funds earmarked for working capital for a firm that is currently selling its product but still losing money. The last two stages is third round financing. Financing for a company that is at least breaking even and is contemplating an expansion. This is also known as mezzanine financing. And the fourth round financing is money provided for firms that are likely to go public within half a year. This round is also known as
Hello
bridge
everyone,
financing.
my name is Nguyễn Kim Long. I'm from Group 2 and I will be your presenter for Learning Objective 2 and to Learning Objective 6 in Chapter 20, Raising Capital. So let's get started.
Learner, the part of 20.2 is public issues. If a firm wishes to attract a large set of its investor, they will issue public security. So, the basic steps for a firm to issuing securities are: first, the management must get approval from the board of directors. Then they will prepare and file a registration statement, and file it with the SEC. This contains a great deal of financial information, including financial history, detailed existing business, proposed financing, and plans for the future. It is required for all public issues of security, with two principal exceptions, which are loans that mature within 9 months, and second, issues that involve less than 5 million. Then, the SEC will study the registration statement during the waiting period. Firm may distribute the copies of a red herring while during this period. A red herring is also known as preliminary prospectus. It should be noted that the company cannot sell the securities during this period, but oral offer can still be made. After that, the firm prepares and files an amended registration statement with the SEC. And if everything is copacetic with the SEC, a price then set and a full-fledged selling effort gets underway. The tombstone advertisements are used during and after the waiting period. We will talk about what is the tombstone later. For now, we will have a look at the process of a public offering and the timeline, how long it takes for these steps to occur. So let's talk about the tombstone. The tombstone basically contains the name of the issuer, and it provides some information about the issues and lists the investment banks which involved with selling the issues. The investment bank on the tombstone are divided into groups which called brackets based on their participation on the issues and the name of the bank that are listed in alphabetically within each bracket. This is an example of Shopko store tombstone, printed tombstone. In recent years, the use of printed tombstone has declined as part of a cost-saving measure for firms. For next, we move on to learning objective 3, which is the alternative issues method. When a company decides to issue new security, it can sell it in a public issue or private issues. There are two kinds of public issues, which is the general cash offer and the right offer. It should be noted that almost all debt is sold in general cash offering. This table shows us all of the methods of issuing new securities. The cash offer. So, as just mentioned, stock is sold to interested investors in cash offer. If the cash offer is public one, investment banks are usually involved. There are a total of 3 basic methods of issuing security for cash, which are firm commitment, best effort, and finally Dutch auction. 2 methods are used for selecting an underwriter, which is competitive and negotiate. We will go through all of these 5, including 3 methods of issuing security and selecting the underwriter right away. First, for the first option is the firm commitment underwriting. So how does this work? First, the issuing firm sells the entire of their issues to the underwriting syndicate, which are just investment banks work together to form an underwriting group to share the risk and help sell the issues. After that, the syndicate will then resell the entire issues to the common public. They make money on the spread between the price paid to the issuer and the price received from investor when the stock is sold. This process is also known as cross spread or underwriting discount. Basically, it's just the compensation received by the underwriter. So the whole process of this is just a purchase-sale arrangement, and the syndicate fee is the price spread. It should be noted the syndicate bear the risk of not being able to sell the entire issue for more than the cost. So, to avoid getting stuck with the unsold share, the underwriter or syndicate will typically go through the process of soliciting information about buyers and the price and quantities they would demand, which are called book building, using a roadshow. The second method is best effort underwriting. In this case, the syndicate is legally bound to use its best effort to sell the security at an agreed upon offering price. They also, in this case, the firm is the one who bears the risk of the issue not being sold, while the syndicate avoid this risk because they don't purchase these shares. They just only act as an agent for the firm. The offer can be put if there is not enough interest at the offer price. The company does not get the capital and they still have incurred substantial flotation costs. It should be noted that this method of underwriting has become relatively rare these days. For the final method in the cash offer, we have Dutch auction underwriting. The underwriter or syndicate will conduct an auction in which all the investors bid for the share, which also known as uniform price auction. Basically, they accept a series of bids that include number of shares and price per share. This approach is relatively new in the IPO market and has not been widely used there, but it is very common in the bond markets. The price that everyone pays is the highest price that will result in the over share being sold, and if the amount of buyer for each share exceeds the amount of share that have, there will have to be some sort of allocation. There is also an incentive to bid high to make sure that you get in on the auction, but you know that you will probably pay a lower price than the price you actually bid. Next, we talk about the role of investment bank, or also known as underwriters. They are the heart of new security issues. They provide advice, market the securities, and underwrite the process. They also accept the risk that market price may fall between the date of the offering price is set and the time the issue is sold. An investment banker's success depends on their own reputation. Also, they help to stabilize the IPO price in the aftermarket. As mentioned before, in the cash offer, a firm can contact with the investment bank under two offer, which is competitive offer, issuing firm sells security to the underwriter with the highest bid, and the second offer is negotiated offer, which is the issuing firm work with one underwriter. Another method is also known as underpricing, IPO underpricing. Determining the correct offering price is probably the most difficult task the lead investment bank face in an initial public offering, because there is not a current market price which is available. The process of determining the best offer price is called book building. This leads to the method of underpricing. Underpricing is actually quite fairly common. It helps new shareholders earn a high return on the share that they buy. However, the existing shareholders of issuing firm are not helped by underpricing. There are several explanations for underpricing. The first explanation begins with the observation that when the price of a new issue is too low, the issue is often oversubscribed. This means investors will not be able to buy all the share they want, and the underwriter will allocate the share among the investor. The second reason is to counteract the so-called phenomenon known as winner curse. Next, we will move on to part 5, which is the announcement of new equity and the value of firm. A firm's stock price tends to decline on the announcement of new issues of common stock. There are a total of 3 main reasons for this. The first one is managerial information, because since the manager are the insider, they are selling new stock because they think it is, of course, overpriced. The second one is debt capacity. If the market infer that managers are issuing new equity to reduce their debt equity ratio due to the specter of financial distress, the stock price will fall. The third one is issue costs. As we will discuss in the next session, there are substantial costs associated with selling security. Whatever the reason are, a drop in stock price following the announcement of new issue is an example of indirect costs of selling security. The final part of my presentation is, of course, the cost of new issues. There fall into 6 categories: raw spread or underwriting discount, other direct expense, indirect expense, abnormal return, underpricing, and finally greenshoe offset. This is the table which shows the cost of equity public offering. I will let you have a look at it. This would conclude my part of presentation. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Khánh Ngọc. So now I will present to all of you the last 5 parts of the chapter 20. First, let's look at the right of the shareholder in the company.
The first section of my presentation is about the preemptive right. So what is preemptive right? Basically, it is the right of a shareholder to maintain a current share of the ownership of a company by purchasing a proportionate share of any new stock issues. Therefore, preemptive right can protect an investor's ability to continue bidding on the winning hands within the portfolio. So let's look at this example of a preemptive right. We have a company ABC. So in this company, we have an investor A owns 5% of the company. Moreover, a company is approached by investor B to lead a subsequent $20 million financing round. So thanks to preemptive right, investor A has the right to invest an additional $1 million in the company. So I have told you about the preemptive right. Now let's move on to explain the right offering. Basically, right offerings is an issue of common stock to existing stockholder. Each shareholder is issued an option to buy a specific number of new shares from the firm at a specific time, after which the right expires. So in the company, the management of the firm must decide 2 things. The first one is the exercise price, that is the price exists when the shareholder must pay for the new share. And the second decision is about the number of rights, that is how many rights will be required to purchase 1 new share of stock.
To understand more about how the shareholder evaluate the price of the right in the company, we will look at this exercise as an example of a right offering. So we have a popular delusions company is proposing a right offering. There are 200,000 shares outstanding trading at $25 each. There will be 10,000 new shares issued at a $20 subscription price. So subscription price is the amount of price that required to buy new share. So first we will solve the questions. What is the new market value of the firm?
Basically, the new market value of the firm is equal to the total price of the share in the firm. Therefore, we take the 200,000 shares multiplied by $25. This is the price of each share, plus 10,000 shares multiplied by $20. This is the price of each share. So we have the total. To have the result is $5,200,000. This is the new market value of the firm. To move on the next questions, what is the right price? We can see that the firm has a total outstanding shares is 200
210,000 shares with a market value of $5,200,000. So the value of an X right share is just simply equal the market value divided by the total outstanding share of the firm, and we have the result that is $24.7619. For the last questions, what is the value of the right? So we can see that it's just basically we take the individual price of each share minus the X right value that we calculate in the previous questions, and we have the result of the value of a right is $0.2381. That's all I want to say about right offering. Now we will take a new perspective in the right proposal. So there are few explanations about the right proposal. The first explanation is that underwriters increase the stock price. The second is that the underwriter provides a form of insurance to the issuing firm in the firm commitment underwriting. And the third explanation is that underwriters can certify the price to the market. And the last explanation is that the proceeds from underwriting may be available sooner than the proceeds from a right offering. To move on, let me turn now to the part 9. That is about the dilutions of stock. Basically, dilution of stock is a loss in value of existing shareholders. So there are several kinds of dilutions as we can see in this chart. The first type is the percentage ownership. This is the share sold to the general public without a right offering. The second type is market value. This is the firm asset negative NBV projects. The third kind is the earning per share. This may decline even with positive NBV projects, so at least in the short run. And the last type is book value. This occurs when market to book value is less than 1. To move on, we now have a brief discussions about the self-registrations of company. Self-registrations is a procedure including regulations that a corporation can invoke to comply with U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. So self-registrations permit a corporation to register an offering that is reasonably expected to sell within the next 2 years. In reality, not all companies are allowed self-registrations. There are some major qualifications include. The first one is that the firm must be rated investment grade. The second qualification is that they cannot have present default on debt. The third qualification is that the market capitalizations must be larger than $150 million. The last qualification is that no recent SEC violations. This part will bring us to the end of my presentations. It's about a long-term debt. So there are two basic forms of direct private long-term financing. The first one is the term loans. They are direct business loans, have maturity between 1 and 5 years, are payable during the life of the loan. And the second type is private replacement. So this is similar to the term loan, except that the maturity is longer. So in result, direct financing may have more restrictive covenants and higher tax, but is less costly to issue and easier to negotiate.